Some days I'm just absolutely consumed with depression. And it just 100% stems from loneliness. You know, there's not a lot of love in this world. There really isn't. If you're lucky, you have a good family. If you're lucky, you have a good mom or a good dad or good parents. If you're lucky, a lot of people don't, you know. And there's a lot of heartbreak out there, and there's a lot of pain, and people adapt and they deal with it however they can. What's normal is not, adjusted families, happy people. That's not normal. What is normal is a big mix of a lot of different stuff. That's normal. And a lot of people, I've come to believe that life is very random. If you're lucky, you'll have a family that comes together, and your family is founded upon love and honesty, right? If you're lucky. A lot of people have families that are backstabbing. A lot of people have families that are founded upon fabrication, founded upon phoniness, founded upon outward behavior, things like that. To a good extent, we're all here on our own, living our own lives, doing our best, but it's good if we have people who have our back. It's good if we have genuine friends. But I don't think that's the norm. I don't think quality family and genuine friends are the norm. I think that, like I said, if you're lucky, you get some of that. If you're lucky, you can find a real friend. If you're lucky, I don't think that's the norm. I think the norm is dysfunction. I think the norm is most people just getting by however they can. I think the norm is people working for their livelihood, people working for their money, people working for the roof over their head, people working for the food they put in their belly. And that's it. And I think people survive a hand-to-mouth existence. Most people survive by a hand-to-mouth existence. Now, there are pockets and neighborhoods and areas where the higher class people live, and you'll have more quote-unquote adjusted life. And that's nice, but I don't think that that's the norm. I don't think that most people are like that. So what do I mean by talking about all this? It's just to be my age and to go through things that I've gone through. I mean, when you're young, you're idealistic, When you're young, you have a heart of gold. When you're young, you're full of wonder, you're full of curiosity, you're full of hope. Particularly, you're full of hope. And as you get older, that hope gets cold, and you go through experiences and you realize that life is hard, and you realize that life is full of pain and life is full of suffering. And if you're not one of those people who've had a hard life, who've had pain and suffering, you just slip through the cracks. And I don't know, it's like life is random. And I had a breakup in 2012 or 2013. I think it was 2013. I had a breakup, and I went through a brief period of being very lonely and being very dejected and depressed. And my thought during that time was that life was super random. Everything's random, I didn't sense God in any of that. I don't sense God in my life. I don't sense that God is particularly arranging any environments in my life. I think if anything, God has backed off, if he exists, because so many things have happened in my life that have put me to the brink, that have put me to the edge. So many things have happened in my life that have pushed me to that point where I'm like, I just don't believe in God. I just don't believe that he loves me. I don't believe that he has my best interest in mind. And a lot of times I've come back from that point, and certain things, certain friends have come, certain girls have come back in my life or something, and kind of gave me a little more hope, kind of made me feel okay again. But then these same people who came back in my life, these friends or these girls or whatever, they ended up stabbing me in the back later on. And so later on, then at a certain point, I just had nobody, and nobody came. And I was like, I guess God is not out for my best interest. I guess God doesn't really care about me, and I guess God is not really loving me. And I've been to that point a few different times, to the point where I realized, like, life is just random. I don't think that any of it is planned per se. I don't think that there's a divine plan for me, at least. Maybe other people, I don't know, or maybe they got lucky and they just happen to have a talent, or they got lucky and they just happen to have a good job, or they got lucky and they just happen to have whatever that put them in the position to where they were able to get a family, or they were able to get a career and a nice house, and they were able, and because of that they attracted a beautiful woman who gave them kids, and then they want to bless God, and then they want to say it's all God. And it's like, you just got lucky. It was just random. That's what it really is, because I've tried to put myself in those positions where I could get those things, and guess what? Certain things fell through. I got sick, or I met the wrong girl, or I couldn't get the right job, or I couldn't work the right job because I didn't have the qualifications, or whatever. And it's like, it's just random. There's no blessing. There's no, like these celebrities, these actors, or these musicians or whatever, who get up on stage and they win awards, and then they want to thank God. And it's just like, I guess technically you were just born with a talent that millions of other people were not born with. And can you really thank God for that? Or can you just thank genetics? Can you just thank DNA? Can you just thank your lucky stars that you were born with the right vocal cords, or the right facial structure, or you were in the right place at the right time, and you did the right things, and you met the right people, and it's all random. Whereas there's thousands of other people who are just as deserving as you, who did exactly the steps that you took and didn't succeed because they lacked a certain thing. They weren't that good looking, or they lacked a certain talent, or they didn't meet the right person at the right time, or they had a hard break and they couldn't make it for some reason. Are they thanking God? You see my point? And so it's like, I mean, the Bible says to thank God either way. The Bible says to thank God for your hardships as well as for your successes. But I at a certain point wasn't able to do that anymore, because I just had hardship upon hardship upon hardship. So I couldn't do that anymore, because I just said, you know what? There's no silver lining here. There's no sun between the clouds moment. There's nothing that's positive about this. It's all bad. Everything about this is bad. Everything about my situation is bad. There was a certain point where I stopped complaining about it, I'll tell you that much. And I just accepted it, and I just said, well, hey, I don't think God's going to help me. If he exists or not, I don't think he's going to help me. Despite what the Bible says about how he takes care of us, and it just didn't happen for me. And I called myself a child of God. And I called myself, one of God's children and one of his lovers. And I loved God and all this stuff that I went through when I was younger, until I just had hardship upon hardship upon hardship. Now you could say, oh, well, you didn't do this right, or you didn't do that right, or you sinned there, or, this was your own fault because you did that, or da-da-da. And that's like, maybe you have some leeway there. But I could come back and counter every one of those things and say, well, if God would have done some preventive medicine here, if God would have done this here, if God would have put this person in my path here, God had all kinds of chances to stop me from doing certain things. He had all kinds of chances. And so it's easy to say, oh, it's your fault. It's not God's fault. It's your fault. That's easy to say, right? But if you're a father, you're going to do everything for your child that you can, and part of that is prevention. You want to prevent your child from running into the street. You want to prevent your child, from making a mistake, so you give him or her every opportunity in order to succeed. That's part of being a parent. And good parents, if you do see them, they will do that. They will put every possible chance to succeed in the path of their children, and there's no question mark, there's no riddle, there's no mistake that this is what the parents want. They make it very clear to the child, you need to do this, and if you do this, then you're going to have this success, etc. Right? But that never happened to me. God never put anything positive in front of my path. He never showed me a positive way. It was just my way or the highway. It was just, okay, here's this church, and you come and you serve this church, and whatever happens. And there's a lot of people who serve that church who nothing good happens to them. But yet there's all these promises in the Bible that God's going to take care of his believers and God's going to take care of his followers, and then he doesn't. And then the ones who actually have good looks, or actually have talent, or actually have the qualifications in and of themselves to get the good things, they want to act like God did it all, when in reality they did it. They did it. So this is how it's hard for me not to believe in God. This is how it's hard for me, particularly after all that I've suffered with women, particularly after all that I've suffered, in my personal life with my personal illnesses and things like that. It's hard for me. In fact, at this point, it's an impossibility for me to thank God. It's an impossibility for me to trust God anymore. It's an impossibility for me to love God. There's no way, because of all the pain that I've been through, of all the negative things that I've been through. And there's always somebody out there who's going to be like, well, you're still breathing, and it's like, yeah, but you don't know what I've suffered, and you don't know what I've been through, and you don't know how dejected I am. Sure, I haven't committed suicide. Sure, I'm still alive. I'm free. I'm not in jail. But and you could say like, well, that's the silver lining, man. That's the silver lining. Like, okay, but so is everybody else. You know what I mean? Like, so is everybody. And I'm not saying that I need to be more than what everybody else is. But the point is I prayed for something. I prayed for a life. I prayed for a wife. I prayed for happiness. I prayed for the ability to take care of myself. And none of that was answered. None of that was granted to me. For all intents and purposes, he doesn't exist. And if he does, he's incredibly selfish, and he only answers prayers for his own things. If you really read the Bible, you'll understand that. When he talks about don't ask amiss, pray, but don't ask amiss, right? If you pray for the things of the kingdom, he'll answer you. Sure, because that's his selfish goal. If you pray for, things of him, he'll answer them. Things for him, he'll answer them. But when it comes to things for you, well, then you got to get blessed, and then you got to get real lucky or whatever. And it's all random. People who put themselves in that position, go to college, go to training, get the right qualifications, and then they go out and get a good job, and then all of a sudden, the woman, of course, magically appears once he has the good job. Then you have the family, and then it's God. Then God did it, and like, I thank God for my family, and I want to bless God for my family. Why? Bless yourself. You're the one who did it. You're the one who went out and got a job, and then mysteriously, magically, the woman appeared. Of course she did, because you have a job. Lose your job, and if she sticks with you, then she really loves you. But she won't. Because if you lose your job, where are you going to live? She's not going to live with you on the street. She's not going to live with you at your parents' house. She's going to go find a real man, because this is what women do. And this is the real problem with these beliefs. Believe in God, and this is what I go through when I get really depressed, is I think about these kind of things. And I think about how God has shitted on me and ignored me and my whole life, all the things that I asked for and everything that I've suffered. And people act like, oh, well, the silver lining is you're still here, and the silver lining is he's still taking care of you. Not really. Yeah, I mean, I've got food in my mouth and I've got a roof over my head, barely. You know what I mean? But he hasn't taken care of all my needs. What about my need for love? What about my need for sex? What about my need for companionship? What about my need for a family? What about my need for my own being able to take care of myself? Those aren't necessities? Bullshit. He hasn't taken care of any of that. So this is where I get with God. This is where I'm at with God, and it's hard on the depressed days to go forward, because all the things, particularly all the things that I've been through with women, and where I just feel like, why? And I look at my situation, I just think, why? It's all just random. You could make an argument and say, well, you didn't find the right kind of girl. I found what kind of girl I could find. I found the best kind of girl that I could find for my situation. Somebody who I was attracted to, somebody who was interested in me. Because if you don't have a job, if you're ill, like I've been, you're shit out of luck. You're nobody. You take what you can get. And what could I get? The best I could do was a bunch of young sluts, a bunch of loose girls. And then I expected them to love me. And they claimed like they did. They acted like they did until they cheated or until they stabbed me in the back or whatever. And then where's the love? Then where's the love? There's no love anymore. There was never any love. Then you see the real true colors of these girls, leaving me for a man with his resources. And there's no silver lining. There's no, oh, well, guess what? You're going to find love right around the corner. There's going to be a girl waiting for you. To just give it 6 months and you're going to be in love. You're going to have, and I've thought like that before, like maybe in 6 months from now, and then 2-3 years later, I'm in the same situation. And I'm like, well, what has changed? Nothing. Because girls don't want me that way. They're not out there for me because I don't make enough money. I don't have resources. Because this is what they want. Then you learn the real truth about what women want, and you learn the real truth about the world, which is that it all revolves around a man making money. It all revolves around resources. The whole world is run a certain way. It's not run by God. It's not run by his providence or his mercy or his love. None of that exists. What exists is economy. What exists is government. What exists is employment. What exists is bills. What exists is a man going out and working, and then a woman deciding to come in, move in and live with him when he's got his shit together. That's what exists. Not real love, not God's grace, not God's blessings or bestowments. That's a bunch of bullshit that people put labels on random activities that they either did or they didn't do themselves. When you go out and you have talent and you put that talent to work, and you go and you find a record producer and you make music and you use your talent to make a record, then you go sign with a label, that's not God's grace or God's mercy or his love. That's you randomly, luckily being born with the type of DNA that made your vocal cords interesting on a microphone. That's all. And you learning how to do something that a lot of people know how to do, but a lot of people don't succeed at because they don't have the right vocal cords, and you do. That's all. You can't thank God for that. Thank nature, thank Darwin, thank DNA. That's all. You just randomly, luckily had a voice that sounded good on the microphone. That's random. And you went out and you did something about it. Somebody who's good at math randomly went out and became a math teacher or a mathematician or a scientist. They don't thank God. They thank themselves because they're the ones who did it. Now, if I sat back and I didn't do anything, like Isaac in the Old Testament, if I sat back and I just did nothing and I prayed to God and I said, hey, can you bring me a wife? Like God brought Isaac Rebecca in the Old Testament in Genesis. Then you can thank God. Then you can say, okay, I didn't do anything to deserve this. I asked God for something and he just brought her to me. And she happened to love me, and she happened to to have the same belief as me, and we happened to fall in love, and it worked. She wasn't a slut. She wasn't cheating on me. She wasn't going behind my back. She wasn't this messed up girl. She just happened to be a great person. That you can thank God for, because you prayed and you didn't do anything. But if you pray and you say, okay, well, I asked God for this, that, and then you go out and then you get a good job and then you this, and then you use that job to attract the girl, well, don't thank God for that. Thank yourself. Thank yourself for qualifying yourself to, play into hypergamy. You played into hypergamy, and that's how you got the woman, because you got the job. That's just common sense.